this is the beginning bit. So welcome everyone. Thank you so much for joining today. My name's Stef Sword Williams, and this is...
I'm Alec, Dudson.
I didn't know how well that would work. I'm the founder of But Being Humble. I set up But Being Humble to help people be unapologetically proud of their achievements. It is an online community event series and a book, which is actually out tomorrow. So if you enjoy anything that we talk about, please do grab a copy of the book. Alec, you're perfectly on point, but I also have my own on my own bookshelf. But yeah, that's everything from me in terms of I basically spend my days looking at ways to help people with self-promotion because it's something we hate to do. And this was something I thought would be a really exciting opportunity, and me and Alex sat down, how could we actually help you right now with some creative inspiration? And this is what we thought would be really useful. And I'm not sure I've seen many events of people showing this sort of stuff, so I'm hoping you find today useful. And I'll pass over just a bit of housekeeping quickly. Please do pop any questions you've got in the Q&A button. There's a chat and there's a lot of people on this group and we don't want to miss any questions, so let us know what you're thinking throughout the session on chat, but put any key questions in the Q&A, and we're going to leave the last 15 minutes to answer any questions about career advice and tips on standing out. Alec?
Yeah, so thanks for that, Steph. I'm Alec Dudson. I'm founder of Intern, and Intern is a platform empowering the next generation of creatives to build their dream careers. So I guess this all started a few years ago as a print magazine. We were kind of keen to really unpick internships and make things a little bit more transparent, because Lord knows that that's not really how it goes in that world. So generally we kind of deal with anything in between, kind of trying to kind of make your way into the creative industries and kind of progressing on, content on our website, editorial content, video series, educational resources as well. And as we'll get onto a little bit later on, we've recently released a web course on how to price your graphic design work, which hopefully a few of you will find useful. But yeah, that's it from me. Looking forward to sharing with you some really kind of interesting case studies that Steph and I have come across over the years, and hopefully that will provide the kind of insight that we'll draw and pick out from that will help you to do lots of interesting things in the context of what it is you're trying to do.
Absolutely. Let's get started then.
Okay, so we've hit the magic 200 number on viewers as well. So what a perfect time to start. Steph, do you want to get us rolling?
Yeah, so the first thing I want to talk to you about is an amazing example. It's called Can I Write for Sprite? And it's by Jasmine. Now, this is one that we will absolutely share with you after as a video because it kind of needs the spark of the video. If you could click on it.
Just a quick warning, Steph, and I was hoping to have the opportunity to let you know this. I've left the audio in, so when this next slide comes up, we're going to be able to hear a little bit of it, but then I'll crack on to the next slide and you can... He says, there we go.
So if you can hear it, this is basically Chase.
You can't.
No, you can't. Well, we'll move on. This is why we don't include video in a presentation. So what this guy does is called Chase Zri, and he wanted to get a job at Wieden and Kennedy in New York, one of the hardest ad agencies to get a spot in. I know because I've tried. And he actually makes a music video, knowing that one of their biggest clients was Sprite. So he puts himself as a rapper at the front of the video. He wears Sprite-related colours, and basically the chorus of this whole song is, can I write for Sprite? And he's like, Sprite, can I write for Sprite? But what's so amazing about what he does with this idea is numerous things. Is that first of all, it's like a genuine music video. He's obviously got some sort of production support because it is super slick. You can see on this bottom left image, one of the things he does is actually get people to pour Sprite over them as they're speaking. And it's just such a brilliant example of how he's taken an application and gone, how can I be really creative with this? And one of the things that he does really cleverly is talk about how he could help their business. So if you know anything to do with advertising, when it comes to TV adverts, you have to often do a 30-second TV advert and a 15 ident. And he says that. He says, I can write TV ads for 30 seconds. I can write amazing scripts. And he builds that into the script of the song. It's absolutely brilliant. It's a little bit on the cheesy side. He is from America, and I think for any of the Brits watching this, I'm sure you'll cringe inside. But the reality is he actually went on, Alec, if you want to click through for me. Mm-hmm. To get so much press about it, and he obviously ended up getting the job along with loads of other people really recognizing and seeing how creative he was. So I think at a time where we feel like just sending off an application, we're not hearing back, the thing that this entire talk's about really is pushing you to think, how could you be more creative with what you do? And if you want to get in a headline, so something I talk to a lot of people about is, if you want to get featured in press and you want to get picked up, what are those headlines going to read, and how do you get to that? How do you get close to that point? Are you doing enough to have a headline that says, dude lands a job by making a super catchy rap video instead of a cover letter? So just have a think about whether you can come up with a new creative idea where you could really stand out against the competition, but that actually is newsworthy and people might pick up on. So that's my first example, and we will absolutely share the link afterwards. Over to you, Alec.
I mean, please watch that video, because it's a delight. And I think the other thing I'd just quickly mention on that is, bear in mind that, like, copywriting, you know, some of you I'm sure are familiar with it. Those of you who aren't, it's effectively you know, the kind of the words that make up you know, an advertising campaign or anything like that. So the genius thing as well in writing his own rap is that's copywriting as well, and he does it super effectively. And there's a real kind of, you know, there's always the obvious way to showcase your skill, and then there's the really creative ways. And I suppose if you're ambitious in what it is that you're doing, there's going to come points where you're going to want to kind of like push at the edges of what that is, right? So I think this is it's such a fun and brilliant, and as we'll see with some of the other examples we're going to share, I think these things tend to get really effective when the entire project embodies whatever it is that you're trying to communicate, top to bottom. And Chase's video is just, yeah, it is flat.
What he does really well on that is actually, he, rather than telling people, he shows people what he can do. So I think we can all go around and tell people who we are and what we're capable of, but by creating that video, encapsulating his skills, he actually shows people how he could work with them. And I think that's the beauty of it.
Yeah, and I think, sorry to drag this on again, but I think what you're saying there is it's a really common misconception with self-promotion, right? That people think it's just about bragging about your achievements. It's not at all, and that's a really fantastic example of how you can completely flip that.
Yeah.
So yeah, one I'd like to talk to you quickly about is a project called Character Building. And it is by an illustrator called Michael William Lester. Another project of his, which I think is also really worth a look at, is the world's smallest portfolio, which, in the same way that the last project we looked at was excellent at generating really kind of quick, easy headlines for a range of design press. So what Michael's amazing at, and why I've kind of commissioned him in the past, and he's, you know, my kind of go-to guy in a few things, he's fantastic at taking a relatively complex idea and distilling it into a really simple image. I absolutely love this one about unlocking female equality. It's just those little touches that just, you know, if you were to take that text away, you can still get a real sense of what's going on. The same with the school dropout ones. The layers on this visually and contextually, I think, are fantastic. Anyway, this is the kind of thing Michael does. But then he went on a bit of a sabbatical. He took some time off. Now, as a freelancer, and I'm sure we've got some freelancers in the audience today, it's a risky old thing, isn't it? Taking time off. Often the perception is, and often also the reality, if you stop, your business stops. And one thing that's really challenging to do is kind of gain that momentum in the first place and then build it up again if it's fallen flat. So Michael went on a bit of a trip around the world. I was trying to, you know, disconnect from work while he was there, but also was still taking a sketchbook with him and kind of playing with some ideas. When he got back, he put together this pretty, and I don't want to downplay it, but a pretty simple, clean idea for a project. Just a series called Character Building, where he gives some of the most famous buildings in the world are like a human character. Simple little GIF animations, lovely series. I think there's maybe 32. And they're like this. You might recognize some of these, the church in Reykjavik in Iceland, the new camp in Barcelona, and I'm ashamed to say I don't know the third one. But again, because it was just a simple and clean idea, super easy to share, it also meant that by coming back from his holidays and launching this project and targeting the kind of design press that he was looking to, you know, specifically going to be interested in this, he was able to generate new interest in work, get some new clients. It's also a lovely way to announce to existing clients that you're back. So this worked really well for him. You can see here from just a few of the press clippings that there is real variety there. Design boom, very much kind of unlocking that architecture, design focused clientele that maybe he had some previous overlap with. Fast Company, I mean, for the Americans amongst you, you don't need me to tell you how big Fast Company is, but huge kind of mass market. And then, you know, one of the Bloomberg sub websites again, which is, I guess, kind of really effective if you're looking for new commercial clients. So again, with any kind of project you can do, if you've got, I wouldn't say that, you know, this should completely influence the creative, but if you've got a really clear idea of who your target audience are before you start a project, the self-promotion kind of tools that you put into play are just far more natural, far more obvious, and they kind of work a lot smoother. Stef?
Yeah, I was just going to say, and also on that, I've written press releases before for projects of mine, and you can absolutely pitch your work in different ways to different publications. So if you know that Design Boon in particular is really focused on craft, then you might want to pitch it on the process that you've done it on. If you're targeting Fast Company and maybe they're more business or innovation led, you might want to talk about how you're reinterpreting the vision of the city through, you know, different forms of media. Like, you can always look at different ways to pitch your creative. So with whatever ideas you have, try and almost do like a mind map of all of your ideas and think about how might the different publications that I want to be featured in be interested in this, and what sort of stories might I hook them with.
Yeah, 100%. And you can just see it in the subtle difference between a couple of those headlines. The, you know, using architectural, for example, as a word in that Design Boom one, it kind of tells you a little bit about that audience, whereas your city's architecture, it can, you know, that can apply to everyone, just that slight tilt of it. So yeah, top tip, that Steph.
Cool.
Phoebe?
The next person I wanted to share was Phoebe Parke. So what Phoebe Parke is, she's the social media editor at Grazia. So anybody who is not from the UK, Grazia is a female-led magazine that kind of covers everything from celebrity news to fashion to kind of trends. And I stumbled across her profile recently, and I think she's absolutely brilliant. I would highly recommend everybody to follow her at Phoebe Parke. What I think she does really well as a social media editor is really mix up the content. So I've tried to include a few examples here that show how she's showing herself as an expert. So on the left-hand side, you've got things like a little checklist of what you shouldn't do. The second image, you've got like a bingo, which is being actually really clever and tapping into the insights that many of us feel and actually playing them back to us. And then you've got things like 3 Instagram caption hacks you should know about, so more of a listicle format. And then most recently, and she's brilliant at doing this, is very quickly adopting the new features or software and on any of the platforms that she uses. So she's been doing TikTok and Reels content for Instagram. And this one, you know, is should I master one thing before branching out and doing a new one, or, you know, working on other platforms, and it's lots of different boxes that pop up. So I think it's really important to remember that it doesn't really matter what industry you're in or what career or profession you're in, is if you really have a think about all the different ways you can push out your content, actually don't be limited by the fact that you're a social media editor. So how could you make a funny TikTok? Like, set yourself that brief and say, how could I do that, as opposed to assuming you can't. And then if you could click on it. I also really love here is that what Phoebe's done is created a 14-day guide, which is like a course on how to improve your Instagram followers and turn them into customers, essentially. And she really breaks down what's included, and then she'll show, you know, a few examples of it. And then she'll also include testimonials or bits of feedback that people have had. And please don't feel embarrassed for ever sharing feedback that people give you. It's one of the best ways for people to buy into what you do, because it's proof. And where she shares these are both on her socials, but also she always creates a highlight reel on Instagram or any of the channels she uses, so that even if I just turn up on her profile, I'll immediately find her work and I'll immediately find it. And I also think it's worth saying is that technically this is just a PDF where she's consolidated all of her thoughts, but by using the word course and by showing that it's a guide and you get extra assets, it feels like a really tangible piece of content that you would want to purchase. And I bought it personally and I thought it was really good. But what's great about this is it becomes a passive income. So if you host this on your Instagram account or your website, that means every day you could make £15 a month just by doing nothing. So do think about the content you could produce that could also kind of just live on and make you money in the background.
Yeah, absolutely. I think passive income is absolutely massive, particularly if you're a freelancer. You know, a good deal of your time isn't going to be spent making creative work. It's going to be spent on all of the other work that goes into lining that up, arranging it, the admin around it. So, you know, if you can have products that are out there that you don't have to lift a finger, you don't have to send an email, you don't have to do a single thing. If somebody can interact with that, access it, pay you for it, you are on the way to building something that looks like a really sustainable income. And that's the scary thing about freelance, right? That it is very kind of like up and down, on and off. But you know, little things that Steph was picking up on then about using the kind of looking at the features within whatever platform you're using to kind of get the word out there in clever ways. You can basically set them up to kind of do the hard work for you. You know, there's the obvious ways to use them, and there's the slightly more, you know, there's the slightly more strategic ways. So again, if you spot anything around, I always think with Instagram, like, think about what you're doing on Instagram. What do you react well to when you find yourself purchasing something directly through Instagram? Just like go back through the steps. Like, was it an ad? Did that draw you in? Was it a story highlight? What kind? Was it some interactive element? Think about those things. You know, all of those tools are available to you, and it's just about finding a way to kind of weave that into your story and what it is that you're trying to kind of do that can make for some really, really excellent results.
Yeah. Can you also click on, because I think there's another slide as well for Phoebe.
Yes,
yeah. So she's also done something really interesting that I really liked as an example of her work. So she started almost doing like agony aunt social media tips. So she takes a profile of someone who is trying to change their social media presence or something that they want to update. So here she said, the one who wants to work with brands. So she'll give a quick synopsis on the second image. She'll talk about what her profile picture is, what her bio reads, and what her feed is. And then the third image you'll see Phoebe actually gives her advice on how she would help her. And I don't know if these are actually people who have submitted, stories to her, or whether it's actually just Phoebe creating these profiles based on the information she's found. But it's just a really great way to show how, her expertise would align with someone and how it would help them further develop themselves and progress whatever they're looking for. And on the final image, you can see that she sort of said, your profile picture should be like this, your bio should read this, your feed should be this. So with whatever advice, and I think it's exactly what Alec's just been saying as well, that whatever content you put out there, sure, you may just want to push out creative work or content that you've created, but also think about whatever advice or ideas or thinking that you might be able to share with other people. Because as someone who has absolutely built a platform on literally just sharing advice, people really want to know sometimes the secrets of your success and how you do it. And it's whatever you feel comfortable with sharing. But I think giving away this free advice is always a really great way, and it's something that I talk to a lot of people about, is if you want to position yourself as a thought leader or grow relationships with people, giving away free content, free guidance and tips is a really good way, and you control what you give away, but it's a really good way to get people thinking and seeing you in a different way. Do you want to jump onto yours, Alec? Your next one?
Yes. So this one, I think it's just is super clever strategically. I think the kind of design idea is nothing particularly new, but the way it's kind of used, bless you, Steph, is spot on. So I caught this. I think this would have been in January, I guess. I saw this. A student at the time, Lucy's just graduated earlier this summer. Final year student at the time, posted this on LinkedIn, and it kind of caught my attention. You know, not just my attention. You'll note towards the bottom of that screenshot, nearly 23,000 likes and interactions. That's gone up. Bear in mind, I did this screen grab back in probably January, so it's gone up a little bit since then. Add to that 822 comments. Now, if we were to be cynical and say that half of those are probably Lucy responding to people who've commented, that's still 400 plus conversations that are started. Now, ostensibly, what Lucy's doing here is sharing a application to Spotify's summer internship program. So whether that program's happening or not, given that all that's gone on, I would usually say is beside the point, but it isn't in the context of the fact that it probably, might not happen anyway, right? So having completed the application in January, rather than just send the email, work really hard on it, send the email away, and then just cross her fingers and see if she got picked out of probably thousands of people, she decided to post it on LinkedIn. Now, one, clever, because where are other recruiters likely to be hanging out? LinkedIn. Another thing she did that was stroke of genius is that you read the very first sentence there: with the announcement of Spotify Wrapped 2019 rumored to come out this week, here's my application for Spotify Wrapped. So she posted this days before Spotify released their entire Wrapped campaign. Look at the hashtags she's used. They're all the hashtags that Spotify was using. So as Spotify have pumped millions into that marketing strategy, she's very, very effectively been able to ride on the coattails of that exposure and get this post in front of lots and lots of people. So again, I think this is something that I would always recommend to people to do. If you spend lots of time crafting something really individual, it's like risk all, isn't it? You could spend all that time and it not come to anything, and it could hang in the balance of like one person's opinion. So if you do something like this and you post it, potentially you can get a lot more value back out of it. So I'll just very, very quickly, we'll whiz through the application. So you'll always see Spotify in the top corner. It's kind of very simply laid out, but kind of plays to the Spotify Wrapped style. Very kind of simple in the information that she's including, just the classic stuff that you would have in a CV. There's some nice bits here that she claims she spent like over 300,000 hours in the library. She didn't. Experience, so all the kind of classic elements of a CV. And then this bit's genius. And again, it's not the first time it's ever been done, but it's very effectively done. A playlist for Spotify that when you read the song titles, reads, "Hello, I'm writing to you in regards to the job vacancy. My name is Lucy. I made this especially for you. As I'm your biggest fan, I will wait for you to call me. And if you think, if I'm your girl, I think this could be it, the internship that forever changed my life." So just a fun little thing to kind of personalize that to Spotify, and also just to show off her creative brain. Nothing, it's not a kind of typical way about things. And again, kind of links to her portfolio sites and everything like that. So in a lot of regards, pretty straightforward. But by posting it on, by having that theme, by using those hashtags really effectively and posting it on a forum like Spotify and openly. Let me see what she said again. So, however, that seems pretty far away. So this is 6 months in advance to when the internship would have taken place. So I thought I'd post it on here and I hope there might be other exciting opportunities available sooner. So you're basically just sharing your CV with tens of thousands of people, which is pretty amazing. Like, I'm pretty sure, there's 230 of us in this room. We could quite easily all send out a CV and get less than, 2 emails back. And if we did that, we'd have less interaction on a CV than Lucy got. Anyway, long story short, you can see here it really worked out for her, and quite immediately, January, she got a 3-month internship with Mother, fantastic agency, and followed that up with one at Cake, which is Havas owned. So again, like, in that time, and she, whether she got the Spotify internship or not, whether it was even running or not, she ended up getting 2 fantastic internships out of it without having to create anything custom for either of those 2. So just really kind of clever, I guess, recycling of an idea that otherwise could have had a lot of time and effort put into it, but just never seen the light of day.
It's such a good example, and I think probably worth saying, I think there is a question that's popped up, like, is LinkedIn worth it for creatives? I think the reality is although maybe creative directors aren't trawling through LinkedIn to find you, lots of CEOs, lots of marketing directors, lots of account managers, lots of other people are. I know, having worked in ad agencies as an account manager, senior account manager, account director, I used to trawl through LinkedIn all the time, and if I saw cool creative stuff, it would actually really cut through. You're more likely to cut through on LinkedIn because it's not actually that creative a space. So I would just always encourage you to make sure your profiles are up to date is an absolute must, and that your portfolios and websites are on there. But I wouldn't underestimate the power of sharing stuff on LinkedIn, because a lot of my posts have gone semi-viral on LinkedIn and have had so many opportunities come through LinkedIn. So I wouldn't overlook it just because it's not as creative. I think there's spaces like the Dots, which are also brilliant and more tailored to the creative industry, but I wouldn't overlook LinkedIn because so many people still use it around the world. The next person I want to talk about is I never can pronounce the names. Keisha and Mai. And if you can click on for me, she's brilliant at integrating herself into her content. Now, she does it in like really self-aware, piss-takey humor, and I absolutely love it. Like, none of this looks cringy or self-indulgent, but that means every time she does a post on her socials, her face is on it. So when it gets reshared by other people, or when people says, who created this, you know exactly who it is. And I just love how she's taken, the first 2 examples are quite jokey and quite funny, and she's kind of putting herself out there and showing a bit more of her personality. And then I think on the 3rd image, she's just really clever of like, she's talking about speaking and public speaking, then she's going to use an image of herself. So I know we freak out by putting our faces on things and, stamping our work with who we are. But this was just a really nice example and series of images that she creates where she is the focus point, and she's doing it so well that it's like, you don't look at it and cringe, you look at it and go, that's really funny and it's entertaining. If you could click on for me, Alec. Mm-hmm. And the other thing, just generally, I would really encourage you to check out Creative Champs, which is her platform that she runs. So she does, on the left-hand side, you can see a Creative Champs podcast, which is essentially just her talking for 30 minutes each week. And actually, if you think, a lot of the time, I think we worry that we can't produce content or we've not got enough experience, but she's just absolutely churning this content out. And she might block out one day and record an entire series of a podcast. And then that's a whole, year's worth of content for her to keep pushing out there. And she doesn't often have guests on her shows. It's usually just her, meaning she isn't waiting around for anyone. She doesn't need to ask anyone's permission on what needs to be edited, but it's her putting her voice out there and her expertise audibly, which I love. The second image you can see, she also has a creative pricing kit that she's created. And again, a bit like Phoebe did, which was really great, was it's really showing everything you get with that, plus and additional stuff that you get on top. So do you think about, like, if you are creating any assets or you're selling anything, really bringing to the surface what are you selling and making it clear so that people can see? And then this final image where she said they can poach your content but not your source, like, I think that's just her. That's exactly how she speaks. That's exactly how she'd talk about herself or anyone else. And I think what's brilliant is you just see her personality come through her branding, her tone, her language, and just the variation of creative ideas and topics she posts. I would really encourage you to check out Creative Champs for anyone who doesn't already. Over to you, Alec.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely second that on Key. She is that there are levels to this thing, and she's so good. Next on, I guess I'm going to talk about a project called Fuse, started by this guy, Jahid Hussain. And I first met Jahid when he reached out to us a couple of years back to kind of wanted to write a story on Intern about his experience as a person of colour studying graphic design, in that he was going into his third year and not once had he been taught by a person of colour, either as a lecturer or like even a visiting speaker. Just hadn't seen, there was no visibility, there was no presence there whatsoever. So we worked with him to put together a piece called Whitewashed, and this is the illustration, one of the headline illustrations from it. And he'd already been working on a final year project, or he had ideas for a final year project based on this subject. And I think emboldened in part a little bit by the big reaction he got to the feature that he wrote for us, which included the formation of another student-led group at Ravensbourne University, as they were one of the universities that he kind of highlighted as having a bit of an issue. He kind of decided to push that on and kind of do something with it after graduating, and that something is Fuse, which I'd really encourage you to check out. Their Instagram is a really kind of, over recent months, has been an excellent kind of place to find a huge range of like amazing resources when it comes to anything, you know, around like the Black Lives Matter movement, kind of social campaigns. But ostensibly they are a platform for people of colour creatives. Jahid still runs the Manchester account, but what he's done that's brilliant, and I think this is always an opportunity if you're a project that you're working on or something, an idea that you have is really purpose driven, is to understand and embrace the kind of power of that purpose. And I think for someone so young, what Jahid's done that is fantastic is he's kind of realized that early on. So as you could see then from that little video, he's now set up a range of chapters in different cities around the world. So being very open about it. If you live in a city that isn't so far represented, you're a person of colour, you're a creative, and you'd like to kind of build a little bit of a local network, provide space for your peers to be able to like show off their work, then you can set one up on a kind of voluntary basis. So America, there's chapters all around the UK, Zurich in Switzerland. It's incredible. So it really is like taking a life of its own. And as Steph was saying before, this kind of idea of being like a thought leader, if you are prepared to kind of start an idea but kind of step back from it a little bit and let it be its own thing, like that's an incredibly mature thing to do. And in terms of like your value and your kind of status within an industry, it's like it looks pretty good. And I would never suggest doing this kind of leveraging purpose purely for your own gain. But if this is something that you believe in, by the time you've kind of put an idea out there, if you can build that initial audience and you get the feel that there are other people around the world who feel the same way, then this can be a fantastic opportunity to run your own business, but be able to turn around to someone and go, well, yeah, but like my business is spread over 6 different countries, like 14 different chapters. Like how many people can say that age 22? Probably not that many. So I think purpose is tremendously powerful in any creative idea, and is a great way to make work about stuff that really means something to you and stand out from the crowd in that regard. But it's also a great opportunity to kind of really put some good out there in the world. Steph?
Amazing. I'm a big fan of Fuse and everything they're doing. The platform's amazing, and I would like to collaborate with them because I think they're doing some great things. The next person I want to talk about is Erin Anika. She's an illustrator that I have loved for a long time. She's spoken on one of my Foot Being Humble panels. She's absolutely brilliant. I would check out her work. And one of the things that I picked up on recently, and I've actually shared this with a few people, but she created this series for Appear Here, which is actually like a building hiring space. So you can hire spaces around the UK that aren't currently being used. And what she was doing was documenting kind of daily accounts from shopkeepers that were using the space. But what I really loved, not only is her illustration absolutely beautiful, she actually goes into, in the description, talking about, you know, what it's about and where she gets her inspiration from. So she sort of says, this recounts how he and his business partner, Frederick, have had to adapt to the trade under lockdown. And then she goes on to talk a bit more about her craft and how she went about creating this. So can you tell, I've been mostly rewatching Studio, I want to say Ghibli films during lockdown. I feel like Studio Ghibli influence has started to creep in. I love the way the food looks in those films. I also found drawing lots of food and seafood related things very therapeutic. So she's kind of like taking you on the journey as to like where she's getting her inspiration, how she enjoyed the process. And then she says, also zoom in to see if you can spot any of the jars of red lentils that they sell, which I've spent a lot of time drawing recently. So I think what's really nice is she's pulling you into the work itself. So not just saying, I see a lot of people who just go, photograph for Nike, done. And then I always feel like you're missing out on an opportunity to tell people the process, the journey you went through. You know, there might be something that you connect with someone else with just on a deeper level by including the fact that you watch these films, or, you know, somebody might really like the idea of searching through your artwork, looking for hidden things. So really actually think about how can you draw people in, not only with the creative that you create, but also with the captions that goes to support it. And then if you could flick through, Alec. I also really liked how Erin shared that she was a judge for New Blood D&AD. So anyone who doesn't know D&AD, it's a creative festival and non-for-profit that kind of awards different creators around the world for the work they've done. And she was asked to be a judge in the illustration category. So rather than just talking about that, she decided to create her own artwork that talked about her doing this. And obviously the great value of this is that she's promoting her craft of being an illustrator, whilst also promoting that she's been recognized as you know, a well-respected illustrator to be a judge. So even when you're maybe making announcements or you've got press or however it may be, rather than just screenshotting, you know, your face with a logo or whatever, you know, the coverage that you might have received, how might you be able to turn it into a piece of creative that people might engage with and reshare on socials? Because we know that on social media, the more attractive the visuals you put out there, the more likely people are going to repost for you. So do think about how, if it is an announcement, an achievement, something that maybe it's a blog post, something, how can you create a visual showcasing your skills that people might reshare on behalf of you? So I just thought they were two really nice examples from Erin.
Yeah, I mean, I think the second one in particular is just such an easy win. It's like you were saying, you know, just kind of there's so many boring ways to post about stuff that you've done, that little extra bit of effort. And the same you were saying before, Steph, about, I guess, how I'd frame it would be giving value when it comes to your social posts or your kind of promo. If you're like generating value at the same time as kind of talking about stuff, it's just way more appealing, right? You know, nobody likes to be sold to, none of us do. But if you're kind of giving somebody something and at the same time kind of mentioning this thing you've done, I think Erin's done it beautifully there to, you know, to take it, you know, nobody at D&AD New Blood asks you to nominate ones to watch. You know, she's done that completely of her own volition. And again, it's that lovely little thing where she starts to position herself then as an expert in that field. She's nominating herself as being, as, you know, having as much right as anyone to like nominate up and coming talent. Fantastic. And you're not going to catch anyone questioning her. Like, nobody's going to turn around and go, Erin, I don't think you're experienced enough to be doing this, mate. It's brilliant. And again, like, as Steph said, like, showcasing her like beautiful illustration at the same time. So lovely. Just a quick one, this one. A tale about a dear friend of mine, Nerea, who I met a few years ago when I was speaking at a event in Barcelona. And Nerea told me, it was like pretty much the first thing, I think the way she introduced herself actually to me was like, hi, I'm Nerea and I want to work for Nike. And I was kind of like, that's fantastic. I don't work for Nike. I don't know how I can help you. But lo and behold, at the time, you'll see the image on your left, is an Instagram that she had set up at the time called I Want to Work for Nike, where she would share and she would post mock-up designs for football shirts. And that was really the kind of area within that business that she wanted to work. As you can see from kind of the posts and the followers, it had limited impact. So, you know, rather than give up at that stage, and I don't suppose you need any clues from me on the one account that she was following from that account and still follows to this day from that account. But kind of undeterred by that, she decided to kind of level things up a little bit and go, okay, if this isn't working, how could I change this a little bit so it does? So with a friend, she set up an independent label of sorts called Supporters Pro, where they basically released, you could buy these kind of kit creations that they were making. They found an amazing local producer. And initially it started out with, I guess, kind of fantasy versions of established teams. So, you know, there'd be a Real Madrid one, there'd be a Barcelona, Liverpool, and Man United. And it was cool. And again, it worked, but to a point. And then they had a bit of a breakthrough moment. And they decided to do a series of Game of Thrones kits inspired by the different houses, I think is the term. I'm sorry, I'm not a big Game of Thrones. If the chat starts kicking off, then I apologise. And also, for the elder people in the room, a Star Wars series. And that's what you can see photographed here. And these, unsurprisingly, went pretty viral because nobody's really done a run of Game of Thrones football shirts or Star Wars football shirts. So they kind of crossed over two very kind of interesting, like, cultural paths, kind of intersected in a really nice way, shot them beautifully. And lo and behold, of course, then came the press. Platforms like Soccer Bible, big kind of football blogging accounts started picking this stuff up because it was perfect content for them, absolute dream content. So obviously there was a lot of foresight and thinking and planning that had gone into that, but it worked a treat. Nerea then went on to get recruited, not by Nike, but by Under Armour, which is pretty good going, I would say, for someone who just, you know, 2 years prior had just, you know, pretty clear dream and had set about trying to kind of get there. So this is the 2019 to 2020 kit launch campaign for Under Armour for all of their teams that they supply kit for. Who was the creative director? Nerea Palacios. So again, this kind of idea, and I think you hear that phrase like so often, you know, shoot for the moon, land in the stars kind of thing. But, you know, 2 years on, I think she was pretty chuffed, going from kind of working in graphic design to working very directly in exactly the field she wanted to. Yeah, not Nike, but last time I spoke to Nerea, like, they'd been in touch, they're aware of her, they've offered her roles, so, you know, in the past, but not quite on the kind of terms or in the area that she was, you know, looking for at the time. She passed up on it on that occasion, but again, you know, whether she ends up working for them or not, and I believe that she will at some point. Pretty amazing to be able to look back on that kind of journey over 2-3 years and be like, hey, I don't work for Nike, but look at all these amazing things I have done. So I think sometimes it's good to have those really ambitious goals. But one of the best things that comes of that is actually like the things it pushes you onto that aren't necessarily you kind of ticking off that goal are still like really incredible achievements, and you can look back on and it's a super impressive career. Steph,
Cool.
I should pass on to you.
We'll probably have to whiz through these last ones, Alec.
Yeah, sorry.
Time and us getting through to some questions as well. So the final person I wanted to share was Jasmine Sehra. I've long admired her work as well. So if you could flick through for me, Alec. What I love about Jasmine Sehra's work is that her style is so distinctive. So she loves doing kind of colourful lettering and really bold graphics. And what she's done here is, rather than, for a lot of people, I think we try and only ever show a specific style of work that we do. So your words or writing or visuals for the sports industry. But what she does is always show a really great variety of clients that she's worked with, and probably shows things that you might not have usually expected. So on the left-hand image, she did personalized notepads for Puma. Probably not something I would have thought they'd do, but as soon as I see it like that, it looks amazing and I can see it working. The second image, you've got her customizing denim jackets, and I think that was with Levi's, and again showing how her work is transferable across over to fashion. And then also she did customizing bottles for Estee Lauder, and actually Estee Lauder are quite a strict brand in some ways and quite a traditional brand, and it's so nice to see them working with Jasmine and doing really refreshing styles and like customization on their products, because it's not something, I think, to get that signed off at a senior level is quite a big deal, to deface some of the products. But it's amazing that they're getting artists like Jasmine involved. But one of the things I love the most about her is how she takes her creative work and shows it and presents it across socials using herself again. So a bit like the examples we were giving earlier. So here on the left hand side, you can see there's one of her prints that she's then put on as her eyelids as makeup, which again just absolutely spotlight how amazing her skills are. And then the second image, rather than just showing a photo of her in a bar or a pub, wherever she is, she's doodled on top of it and done some amazing graphics that again just lift it and create this really distinctive style. And then also the third image that I absolutely love is she collaborated with Instax cameras. And again, to my earlier point about thinking about when you work with brands or clients or you get covered or featured, it's actually about looking, how can you then, rather than just posting those images, she's placed them on an Instax kind of visual, and then she's illustrated her own graphics around the edge of it, so it still always feels like Jasmine's work. So I feel like you could look at her feed and you just always notice that she has like amazing style and just a really standout look and feel. And I think for any brands that go to look to work for her, amazing. I think for any audiences that are just fangirling her like I do, you just always know that that's Jasmine's work, and it's really simple but really nice to see the different applications of her work.
Yeah, I think when it comes to personal branding, like consistency is so important. It drives the kind of value of what you're doing, and I think Jasmine does that so well. We started on a rap video. We'll end on a rap video. So this one won't take very long. You may well have seen it, but it's definitely worth. I'd bring this up any opportunity I can because I love it. Mr. Bingo, you might be familiar with him. This is his hate mail project. He doesn't do it very often these days, but this is what kind of relaunched his career in this new mold. Takes vintage postcards, sells them to people as art pieces with a customized insult on the back. I have chosen 6 of the mildest.
I love these so much. I bought one for my friend for her birthday.
Yeah, so they get I think I bought guy who used to work for me, I got him like a customized book, and he slayed him. It was pretty brutal. Anyway, this was the project. He had this published as a book, I don't know, 5-6 years ago by a relatively mainstream publisher. They, as mainstream publishers often do, they kind of edited some stuff out. He wasn't super happy with that. He kind of felt like it would be nice to go back to it as the project expanded and give it like a fresh lick of paint. So he went to launch that on Kickstarter, and maybe we can hear the opening tones of. No, we can't. Never mind. That's fantastic. Oh yeah, we can.
Yo, I'm the illustrator, known as Mr. Bingo.
I'll spare you the rest of it, but it's a work of genius. So rather than just a crowdfunding campaign with like a typical run through video, made a music video, and a pretty incredible one at that. There was some also watch, and I'll include some of these links in follow-up email. There's an incredible story about how he gathered together his posse that appear towards the end of the video, and he basically was hanging out in a shopping centre, trying not to look like a weird old fella approaching kids, but having to approach kids going, do you want to come and hang out in my rap video?
Alex, someone just said in the chat that they were part of the rap video.
Oh, get in.
Yeah.
Incredible. Then you are forever famous and revered in East London. That's amazing. I would love to know how he approached you, because the story goes that he just kind of was like nervously walking up to like groups of teenagers in a shopping centre. Who knows? Maybe that's maybe I'm getting in the way of good. Don't let the truth get in the way of a good story. Anyway, we'll send you links to that video, but incredible. And same as with the Sprite example, he's rapping about a book. He's talking about like cloth bound and like foiling and all of this like nerdy stuff, but does it so effervescently. And sure enough, he managed to raise £135,000 to like make this book. That's obviously not what he keeps, because book production costs money. But an average backer spend of about 36 quid a head, which ain't too shabby. And again, I guess just quickly to close on this one, just going above and beyond, it makes so much difference in the creative industries. If a big easy win for how to stand out is just like push things further than other people can be bothered to push them. And if you don't have all the resources, like there's always a creative workaround. It doesn't have to look super polished. If you just grit your teeth and go for it, and like accept that it isn't going to be, and embrace the fact it isn't going to look perfect, people will fall in love with it even harder than if it was. So that's it for that. So we can move on now, only a little bit late, to the Q&A section.
So just very quickly, do we have a wrap-up slide just with our things that we wanted to jump before we went into the...
Oh yeah, we can do that now.
Yeah. Oh, your image is missing. Oh, it's there. So just very quickly before we jump onto the Q&A, because some people might want to finish up. So some people have said, like, is there any ways that we've both creatively self-promoted, and perfectly on cue, this is what we're doing. So just one final reminder that if you do want to grab a copy of Being Humble, it's out tomorrow. It's available in the UK, the US and Australia. So please grab a copy if you are interested. Help you with everything, talking about yourself, networking, asking for more money. I've interviewed 9 incredible trailblazers in the creative industry, and they've all given their advice as well. So that's my little social self-promotion plug for you there. Alec, you do yours super quick, and then we'll jump onto the questions.
Yeah, we've got a online course available at the minute. The price is right. If you are a graphic designer or want to dabble in graphic design and want to know how to price your work, it's a one-stop shop with yours truly. We'll go through everything from kind of setting a rate that works for you, negotiation, contracts, chasing payment, invoicing, top to bottom. If you've never sent an invoice before, it's perfect. If you have and you're charging people 50 quid for a logo, it's also perfect for you. No more of that stuff. So let's get back on with the Q&A.
Great. So we've had quite a few questions coming in. So do you usually think it's helpful and worth sending your work or submitting some of your projects to the publications and websites that you like and follow? So I think the question is there is, if you want to get picked up by press or seen in platforms and media, do you think it's worth submitting your own work and sending projects through? Alec, do you want to give an answer on that one?
120%. That's like the main way it happens. Further up the food chain, people would employ a PR agency, and that's what they'd be doing on your behalf. So it's tricky when you're and please don't take this the wrong way, because we always start here, it's tricky when you're a nobody versus like coming in from basically a PR agency. They just have the contacts, they already have the relationships. So a cold email can be tough. I would always look at their submission guidelines, follow them to a T. But yeah, like put yourself forward. Like if it doesn't work out, it doesn't work out, but there's no harm in trying. Chase up and try and get some feedback. Other than that, you can be a bit more holistic about it. Who are the people writing these features? Reach out and connect with them, get on their radar. Like it's not all going to happen overnight as much as we'd love to. And so much of this is about building relationships. So there's lots of ways you can do that. Steph?
Yeah, no, I think I'm a strong believer that you need to be following all the people. You need to be connected with them on LinkedIn. You need to be in their space, sort of not in their face too much, but you just need to put yourself on the map. I think a really good tip that I give to a lot of people is we expect that big companies and media platforms are just sat at their desks typing in stephanieswordwilliams.com, and the reality is they're just not. And I hate to be the bearer of bad news, but the more you send through to people, the more you submit and share. I have a friend that started an Instagram account in lockdown, and within 3 weeks of posting his work, purely just his work, he got invited to exhibit at an international design festival. And he also, because he was literally posting his work and then DMing Design Boom and some of the big platforms that he wanted to be recognized for. So please don't worry about putting yourself forward, and you will, if you don't do it, you'll be sat around waiting forever, wondering whether they will. But if you make those steps forward, then you give yourself a better opportunity too. Alec, we'll move on to the next question. The thing that I struggle with is that I'm such a perfectionist. That's why I'm a bit too shy to post things on socials. Do you have any tips for me? I'm sure, in fact, give me a yes or no in the chat if anybody feels like a perfectionist, or being a perfectionist stops you from posting things, because I know a lot of people. Yes, the chat is going off. Yes, because I know a lot of creatives that feel like that. Alec, what's your advice?
I am also super, super, super guilty of this. And my advice is just to push yourself out of your comfort zone. I could sit here all afternoon and tell you of times that I've done this and how it's backfired. But ultimately, if you put something out there and you're not 100% happy with it, you are providing or you're at least putting something in place where a conversation can happen around that. So think carefully about how and where you post it. What's the caption that's going with it? If you want somebody to help you, if there's something you're trying to kind of solve and you just can't seem to crack it, like post something and go, posting this, still work in progress. I'm trying to kind of fix this thing. Is there anyone out there who can help me? I know people who've done that in the past on like things like Reddit, in like super specific, video editing forums, and have got like incredible feedback from, like industry professionals. But just generally, like I think getting used to posting stuff that you're not 100% cool with it's always going to be hard if you are kind of really like visually driven. But if you just sit on something and you're struggling to find the answer, chances are somebody else is going to just post that thing or like do that thing that you've been thinking about doing before you do it, and that is way, way worse. And also, please don't think, particularly if you're at the start of your career, that it's like you have to be perfect all the time. No one is. So put stuff out there, learn from it. As long as you're learning from something, it's ultimately a positive thing.
Absolutely. And I think it's so funny that you asked that question, because I actually have written in the first, Alec, you might have seen it already because Alec got an early copy, but I've actually written a section about the procrastinating perfectionist, because I actually believe that is a genuine stereotype of a creative, of people where you are constantly putting things off because you're so worried about it needing to be perfect, but in reality you actually never send anything out, and you convince yourself you're not good enough when actually you've never been told you're not good enough, or even when you have, that was maybe just a point in time. So I need you to get out of your perfectionist state of mind and really push yourself, because if you don't, then you will literally sit and look back in 20 years time, you will go, I literally wasted so much time. And even Alec and I, the way we've been working together, Alec's got an incredible attention to detail. I am very much like, it'll do, let's get going. And I think I've had an it'll do mentality throughout my entire career, but most definitely running Foot Being Humble, because for me it was a side hustle, so I didn't have the time to be a perfectionist. I had to get on with it, like a lot of people do. And actually, the more you spend obsessing over the minute detail, people don't actually care anywhere near as much as you do. And I don't think I would have excelled as quickly in my career had I have hung on to being a perfectionist. So I think it's really important for you to let go yourself, but also in order for you to grow your career and get on with things, you have to let that perfectionism go, because it really, if you're true with yourself, you'll never be perfect, because you have such a high standard. You will never let yourself, you'll never be good enough in your own eyes. I think we all feel like that. It doesn't matter how many times we do things, we'll always question whether we're doing enough, whether we say enough important things, and that shouldn't be the reason that you don't put yourself out there, because we literally all feel it. Next question. What should I do if I'd rather remain anonymous online and hide my face? I'm not comfortable with showing who I am and my identity. Alec?
Work under an alias. I know an illustrator who has super cool, like super stylized personal practice, and that was all the only kind of practice I was aware of. But then I was kind of working with him and saw him working on his laptop on a completely different style of illustration. I was like, oh, what's this? He was like, oh yeah, so I have this completely separate website, completely separate socials, and on this one it's like my commercial illustration. I just like do that over here. That kind of pays the bills right now, and until the point where like the stuff I'm passionate about is like everything and like covers all those costs, like this is my kind of go-to. And I think in answer to your question, like you don't have to, like, just because you see people posting their faces on social media doesn't mean you have to. It's dependent on your craft. It's dependent on what you want to do. If you want to be a public speaker, it's going to be pretty hard to, hide your identity. But,
I was actually going to jump in here. Sorry to have a bit of a live debate on here. But that actually, I've tried to build Foot Being Humble without, bar me being there in person. If you actually scroll through the majority of my feed, I hate posting videos of myself. I hate pre-recorded content. And I actually think a lot of people have said to me, you're a public speaker, you need to have videos. And guess what? I've got loads of public speaking gigs without putting my face and without putting loads of videos online. So I think a lot of the time, if the content's rich enough, that's good enough. But I didn't mean to stop you in your flow. I just more meant that I think, it is totally down to you and whether it's needed. And at times you might be asked to share it, but I don't think you always have to have your face there. And I think quite a lot of people have really successful careers and you don't even realize who they are.
Yeah, absolutely. And again, like, just because even if your specialism is one where people typically do that, doesn't mean you have to. Again, like if the value that you're bringing is kind of getting people interested in whatever it is that you do, then that's enough. So yeah, it's just peer pressure, it's bollocks, it's social media, like it's a nonsense. You just do you, and that's fine.
I couldn't agree more. But yeah, I as I said, just to echo my point, that I know so many designers and incredible talent that don't show themselves, because actually what we're here to see is your work. I think it's only essential if you're trying to build something where it's based on maybe relationship based, kind of people and bringing it together at some point. But I think for a lot of creatives, you can remain quite anonymous. Alec, we've got another question here. Do you have any tips on separating yourself from your work and not allowing yourself to be defined by your Instagram following? Which I think is a really good question.
Ooh. I feel like there's a few different things going on there in terms of like separating yourself from your work in a kind of like personal regard. I think that's really difficult when you're a freelancer, and boundaries are the only way to do that. And unfortunately, you have to be the one who sets those, and that can be really challenging. In regards to like not being defined by your Instagram, I think a lot of that is just it's tricky, isn't it? Because it's such a kind of fundamental platform that we use now across any kind of business, certainly across the creative industries, to kind of put ourselves out there. But it is just that it's just a platform. And I think one way that you could maybe shift the dial a little bit on your relationship with that is start scheduling and planning your posts. Don't do it ad hoc. Don't like wake up in the morning going, oh, one of my tasks for today is to come up with a really good post and interact loads. Get yourself on something like Buffer. If you're tight like me, you know, go towards one that's got a free account. You probably don't need to pay for that stuff. Have one day a week where you create and line up all your social posts, schedule the buggers, and then just forget about it. And see how long you can go. And it's not going to be overnight. You're not going to completely change your relationship with social media, but just see if you can spend like a morning not looking at it, not checking for notifications, not replying to any, almost like set yourself office hours with it. And just be, with any kind of change you're trying to make in your life, don't try and make lots of changes all at once, because they won't stick. Try and make small, incremental, achievable changes and just tick those off as you go. Things, to become a habit, you need to give things a good deal of repetition. So little changes incrementally, I think, are the way forward.
Yeah, I think also it's probably really important for you to think about, why is an Instagram following so important to you? Like, will it actually change your career or your future? I have totally been a victim of, I need to get to 10,000 followers. And I did get to 10,000 followers. And guess what? Literally nothing changed. Literally, like, you can add a swipe up on Instagram, but I don't think it's accelerated anything more. I think it's good for you to have targets. If social media is a platform that you really want to use and you want to measure, and you know, some amazing things have come off the back of it, but I think with everything, it's just a shop window to what you can do. It absolutely isn't the definition. The amount of people that walk into a store isn't the only, you know, definition of the success of that store. It's about whether people actually enjoy and like the products and want to purchase them. So try to remember that social media and the numerical value to it is like, it's as much as you let it consume you. To Alec's point, if you can schedule posts, if you can minimize your time in app, that really helps, because the more you get in the app, you start scrolling, you start comparing, you start questioning. But I think, you know, there is a healthy dose of like wanting to build your following, and you shouldn't feel guilty for it. But I think the word that you used in that question was not letting it define you. And that's what's really important, because it doesn't matter. Your work could be absolute. Think about all the incredible artists out there who don't have an Instagram account. It doesn't mean they're not good. It just means that they're not on Instagram. Like, it's literally just a digital space. And I also think we have to be really real and remember the fact that it's so easy to like an image, as in double tap something. Whether they actually like it, whether they actually advocate for you, I'm going to be really tough love here, is like, you got to think about it that way as well. Like, the people that support you and value you aren't always the people that like your stuff on Instagram. So absolutely try not to let that be the reason that you or, you know, you review your own success, because usually it isn't down to that. What's your advice to adding people that you don't know on your LinkedIn network? I worry about being associated with people that don't have a good reputational work ethic. I'll jump in and answer this one first. I literally live on LinkedIn because I used to be a new business director, and I used to look at ways to generate new business, work with brands and clients. I'll be honest, I say yes to a lot of people, but I also get trolled by a lot of people on LinkedIn, unsurprisingly, young female being disruptive with a brand like Fuck Being Humble. And I think it's more just, someone asked me recently how I manage trolls or people that I don't, and as soon as something is said wrong to me or I don't like it, I delete their comments and block them, because I don't want their negative energy raining on my parade, basically. And I think that's a really good way to, like, whenever you're adding people into your network, whether it's in person or digitally, the minute you start to feel like there's a hostile environment or people aren't actually supporting you the way that you are, then just remove them from your network. If it's that simple, then why would you put yourself in a situation where people would critique you? And I don't mean that I can't take bad press. It's like when people are just nasty for no reason, or unsupportive, and you don't feel like you're getting from them what you thought you might have done. But I do think I've absolutely accepted so many random people, and lots of things have come from it. So I'm a bit of a serial connector. But the minute they step out of line, I'm like, see you later. So I would say yes to who you feel comfortable with. But I also think sometimes look at their jobs, and, you know, if I've got someone who's head of IT software in Texas, I'm probably not seeing the connection there. So sometimes I won't accept them. But I wouldn't underestimate who they might be, because they could have the power to introduce you into their teams, or they might know someone they want to connect you with. So it's always good. The bigger your network, the more useful it is, would be my advice.
Yeah, so I mean, I kind of have a slightly different take on this, and not stirring the pot here by any means. But a big thing for me is when you send, and just in the time that we've been on this doing this lecture, I've had like 5 or 6 new connection requests on LinkedIn. Now, one thing and if one of these was you, I'm not coming for you, but one thing I'm pretty confident of is that very few, if any of those, will have any kind of like note attached to them. It drives me bananas. Like if I'm going to connect, with someone, oh, you hate notes, right? Okay. So my kind of take on this is, and you can read more on a post I wrote on Intern. We'll kind of include it in the email. For me, if I'm connecting with someone and if I know them, so if I'm connecting with Stef and me and Stef have already chatted, obviously it's a functional thing. I'm just going to send the connection request. I assume, unless I've completely misread our relationship, or Stef is now kind of completely put off me due to my like controversial LinkedIn
Absolutely
thought, chances are like she's just going to accept it and it's fine. If it's somebody I don't know and I'm trying to connect with them, in a note, I just want to give them some context. Like, this is me, this is why I'm reaching out to you. I'm not necessarily telling them I want this now, or, you know, I won't kind of go in and like steam in and like try and sell something to them. But say it's somebody who, I don't know, who might be relevant for me. I don't know, they're like a head of a course at a creative university. I might say something like, hi, my name's Alec. I run a platform called Intern. We do a bunch of stuff trying to support creative students. Would be good to have a chat sometime, or like, you know, would love to learn more about what you're doing in the department. Now, they can arguably get that content or that context by checking out my profile, but they're not going to get that kind of like context in regard to my intention. So for me, it's always a lot more likely if I have absolutely no idea where you've kind of found me and what your kind of reason is. If you just tell me, if you just give me, it's not like a popularity contest. I'm not like going to deny you if your reason isn't good enough. It would help if connecting with me is something that you're doing in the hope that somewhere down the line I can help you. If you tell me how I can help you, it's more likely that I'm going to be able to do that. It might not be helping you directly, it might be connecting you with someone who can. But if it's just like a random ad, I ain't got a clue. I ain't got a clue at all. And, you know, as not to be a boasty toad, but as someone who gets quite a lot of these requests, often from, you know, students, and I can understand the kind of function of that, it's really helpful to me if you actually tell me what you need from me, and then hopefully I can help you out.
Well, there you go. 2 opinions on that one. I think I think I totally get it. I think sometimes, in some cases, you can, it might be the reason they don't accept. So if you remain anonymous and you don't tell them why you're getting in contact. But I think, do you know what? It's probably useful trialing it with different people. So with any company or any opportunity that you want, pick, you know, 2 or 3 people from that business that you want to connect with. Try with a message, try without a message, see who connects, see what the patterns are, and see how people get back to you. But I think LinkedIn is definitely one of those spaces that even when they do accept you, sometimes they don't they don't reply to your messages. A lot of people say they don't have success on LinkedIn, but it is just about liking, sharing, resharing, commenting on posts. Like, I actually think that's the better function, is like tagging people, you know, really kind of attracting people to your work once you've connected with them. But yeah, like definitely use LinkedIn, because I think it's probably one of the best platforms if you think that most people update their professional profiles on there and they connect themselves to a business. Is it useful to tag other accounts who might relate to your post when you upload new content on Instagram? For example, brands that might want to appear on the photo, or topics, or, you know, if you create content and it might be relevant to them, should you tag them in it?
I think it's context dependent, right? One thing that I personally think has limited success, and probably in some cases can actually be detrimental, is when you do that thing where you like bang all of the tags down one corner and you try and fit as many in as you can. It doesn't look good. It's really like, think about how people, you know, how you would feel if you were just lumped in with a load of other folks, some of them seemingly random, or like you seem a bit random. It's context. So if you're doing like a fictional project and it's for a brand, yeah, absolutely tag that brand. Like, maybe even tag some people who work at that brand. Like, you know, if the creative director of that brand or art director has an open public profile, like, yeah, tag them. But the kind of it's always quality, and for quality in brackets, see like context over quantity, because it just seems careless. It seems lazy. It's like the equivalent of either being invited to a party with a personalized invite, or like walking down the street and somebody just like pushing a flyer into your chest. So just think about how that plays, would be my advice.
No, and I agree. I think if you're going to tag people, you're probably better tagging them via a comment and saying, thought I'd tag you in this because I know you love work like this, or I know you might be looking for creatives. Here's something you might be interested in. To Alec's previous point of like making it personalized so they know why you're doing it. I actually hate it when they do exactly what Alec just said, which is spamming you with loads of tags, because it doesn't feel like you're being personal with me. I'd rather you DM'd me and said, I've just shared this post. I really love what you do, and I thought you might like my design style, or here's an example of how I write. If you have any, you know, freelance copywriters that you work with, then I'd love to be considered in the future. You know, like, actually open up that dialogue. Whereas when it's just a meaningless tag, it doesn't really feel like you've considered me in the process. You're just one of many. And I get it on LinkedIn as well. And I actually just immediately detag myself, because I don't want that as on my feed, because I haven't necessarily agreed with you tagging me in that and being part of my feed for that reason. So it's always about being personalized and making sure people see the value of why you would bring them into the conversation. Next question. I think this is a really interesting question. Do you think it's okay to charge family and friends the same amount you charge clients? I'm sure we've both experienced this. I feel like they always expect a discount or a very reduced price, but it takes a lot of work, or even more, because they really care about what you do and you really care about what they do. Alec, what's your experience on that?
Right, okay. Let me get stuck into this one. So for kind of purposes of, let me see. I would separate in that regard probably family and friends, and everyone's family is different, and everyone's like friend circle are different. But looking firstly at friends, absolutely charge them if you feel it's right for you. Absolutely charge them what you charge normally. At the end of the day, your prices, fingers crossed, aren't like just pulled out of the sky. There's a reason behind you charging what you charge, what you do, and we often suffer with this in the creative industries. People don't think it's a real job. People think you just lie down like with a beer on and just like open Photoshop and mess around for 15 minutes and hey presto. That's it's a really kind of negative perception that you're always kind of dealing with. I tend to find with this that it's the most egregious breaches of that kind of like trust that you might have are friends of friends. They're the fucking worst. my mate was wondering if you could do this. It's basically the start of a slippery slope. And what usually happens as well is that those kind of, there's no contract in place. Those kind of things are quite sketchy. Oh, it's just this quick thing. The first time you hear, oh, it's just this quick thing, either run for the hills or like do the process the same way that you'd always do the process, define the brief. Because the moment you don't, these things snowball. These are the kind of characters who are like, they don't understand, or they certainly don't align with your understanding of what value work has. I'm not going to kind of go into this like super deep, and if that's the kind of thing you're really interested in, we really go into it in the course. But yeah, like you can't. Your problem is that if you start doing bits and pieces for people on the cheap, that's the reputation that you get, and that word of mouth is probably the most effective means of marketing, because it's based on trust, right? Ultimately, if you're ever going to sell anything to anyone, they need to trust you. And if somebody recommends someone to you, you're like, okay, if you're like fully vouching for them and they've done work for you, I trust that, right? If when people are recommending you word of mouth, they're going, oh, and also it cost X, it's really hard for you to like turn around and go, oh no, actually it costs Y. I'm like, well, sorry, I didn't. So you're just digging yourself a hole there. I would be, if people think you're being harsh, or if it upsets people within the family unit, I guess that's a risk, but they'll get over that pretty quickly if you don't do the work, I'd imagine. Like the conversation stops there, rather than it being something that you both feel sore about for years after. So call me harsh or a stickler, but I'd just, no. It's different to doing something for free for a family member or for a friend if it's a project that you really believe in and you want to donate that time. But if there's money involved, don't start dishing out discounts, because you'd be all over the shop. Sorry, rant over.
Wow, I don't think I've seen you be so passionate about a topic.
Hey, well.
I want to know what your family have commissioned you for in the past.
Absolutely nothing.
That's why you're so opinionated. I think I also run a session called Bitch Better Have My Money on money. I actually haven't got that lined up as an event right now. But one of the things that I sort of encourage anyone when it comes to paid work is just always looking at what do you gain from it, and using that as a filter. So if your dad is asking you to do something and it's a plumbing company and it's actually not going to help you stand out against the crowd or do anything, and you're not sure you're going to have an amazing result out of it, then to Alec's point, yeah, you make sure you charge them at the same level, and you would sometimes overcharge them to put them off, sort of thing. But I have done work for free for big global brands or at very discounted prices. It's gone well, and then they've got me in for repeat business and I've doubled my fees. So sometimes it's about thinking about, okay, and also I think if you ever do lower your prices for family or friends, is that making it very explicit of, this is what I would normally charge. I am happy to make a discount on this occasion for this project, but any future work we'd need to discuss the amount of work or the time that was needed, how many days, and I would most likely charge you at my normal rate. So I think, if you think it would help to grow your portfolio, or it helps to have some work, I know a lot of people are struggling to get clients at the moment. So, getting commissions from family and friends is actually quite useful and helpful. So if that's going to help you raise your profile and actually help you build up a day rate that people would justify spending on you, then, maybe you don't mind giving a discount at that time, but make it really clear always what you would charge people. I had a client recently say they only had X amount of money for the year, which was actually the same amount of price of what I would charge them for a talk. And I said, well, that's what I do. I'm happy to talk to you about it. They came back with a price that was slightly lower, but I really see the opportunity and I want to work with them. And I've said yes, but somehow they've managed to spend 3/4 of their budget on me, where they originally said
interesting.
So, you know, I think it's just worth, like, a lot of people say they don't have budget and they don't have money. The only other thing to consider is a skill swapping base. So if, for whatever example, you do something at a discounted rate, what might you be able to get back from them? Might you be able to say, I'm happy to do that, but if you recommend me to 3 other of your contacts that might need design, like, look at ways that you can gain from them, whether it's like, I'm happy to do this if you can reshare my work across all of your social media channels because you've got a following of 20,000 people and I want to sell a book right now. Like, think about, always look at, almost make a long list of what could you gain or what could you ask for in return to replace the discount or the money that you kind of request. Alec, I'm mindful of time and how much time.
Should we do one more for good luck?
Yeah, because we've got a lot of people.
P.S. Like, big love to those of you who had sent me LinkedIn requests who've now added a note.
Added a note. I love that.
My guy.
Anyone who's adding me, don't worry about adding a note. Let's have a look. I have been applying for creative jobs recently, majorly on LinkedIn, in Indeed and LinkedIn. But these medias have not gained very positive responses. What other platforms do you suggest for applying for jobs?
I mean, I would definitely persist with one of them. Sorry, one of them was LinkedIn. One of them was
Indeed.
Indeed, yeah. I mean, Indeed's tricky for creative one. There's what's the, is it called If You Could? There's the It's Nice That jobs board. They might be the same thing. There is
Players is good as well.
Yeah. I mean, there's lots out there. I guess I would always I wouldn't give up on LinkedIn just now, but I would also think about the more, how to put this neatly. Lots of people get jobs without necessarily responding to job adverts. So have conversations with people that you want to, you know, companies that you want to work for or with. Don't like wait for them to post something. Get ahead of the queue. Like, they might not be looking for something right now, but again, like a lot of things when it comes to careers, we kind of want there to be an overnight solution. And if I'm being perfectly frank, there isn't one. So job hunting is hard. Believe me, I know. I'd kind of spread your bets a little bit. Do focus your time and energy on some places that you would absolutely love to work on. It's no harm to have a few kind of moonshots in there. Just mix it up. I will try, and one thing we could do in the follow-up email, maybe I'll make a note. Steph and I will put together a little short list of some of the other job sites we recommend. The Dots is all right. The Dots is, I hope no one from the Dots is watching. Kathy, if you are, I apologise in advance. The Dots, I find, for jobs can be really good. It can also be a little chaotic. So, you know, all of these platforms have their pros and cons. But, you know, another thing you can do as well is like pay close attention to each of those companies' social feeds, like maybe their Twitter might be a really good one. Where are they posting those opportunities, or which platform? It might go out on multiple. Which platform is the one that they seem to be like talking about the most? That could give you some kind of tips as well.
Yeah, I think to add to the list, so I mentioned major players can be good. Lecture in Progress is good because they also give you profiles on jobs and they do interviews with people within the industry. They've interviewed me, they've interviewed loads of different people on their day job. So you can actually just find out loads of good intel about what a role actually, you know, means and what it does and what you are expected to do. So it's a good space anyway. And I think to Alec's point, like, sign up to the brands that you want to work for's newsletters, make sure you follow them on socials, add the senior people. So add the MDs, the CEOs, the HR directors. The best bit of advice I ever got from a recruiter was like not to be scared to adding senior people because they're not that superior. They're not that big a deal. They've just got a title and they probably just want to make their network bigger anyway. So don't worry about, you know, getting in contact with them. I would, it's entirely up to you whether you send the message or you don't, but actually on LinkedIn when you're adding them, but just making that step of adding them is really important because the sooner they know who you are. I always use the analogy as well that it's like dating apps, Tinder, Bumble, whatever, Hinge, whatever everyone uses these days. is that like, unless you match with someone in that first bit, that consideration stage, how will they ever know anything about you? So you have to always do that first match in order to start the chat, in orderly to get happily, you know, married ever after, or just to get a bang in. So it's the same with connections. You have to get on their radar, then you have to start a conversation to hopefully get you a job or something happening for you. So yeah, I think that's everything from us. Absolutely do follow us on This Is Intern, and thank you to everyone who stayed on. We had nearly a full house stay on. So many great questions and so many great content and pieces of advice. I hope you've enjoyed everything that we've shared today. Do let us know if it's something that you'd want us to do again. It's something that we've talked about potentially happening again. Regularly sharing creative work that inspires us, as I know sometimes it's hard to find it yourself. But yeah, from my perspective, just remember that self-promotion shouldn't be a dirty word. That's my catchphrase. Don't let anybody ever make you feel guilty for doing it, or for achieving in what you do, and try and use this time to creatively self-promote and get as much inspiration as you can. Alec, any final words?
I guess just to sum up, whenever you're trying to kind of launch a new product or like get to a new place in your career, it can be tricky. It can be really challenging. There's a lot of competition out there. If it doesn't go right for you first time, please don't let that put you off. Just kind of take a step back, get a pen and a piece of paper out, see if there's another way you can come up with approaching that problem. Your ideas are always going to be kind of at the core of what you do in the creative industry. Nobody can take them away from you, and don't worry about not being able to come up with any more. You'll be absolutely fine. So if it doesn't happen tomorrow, don't let that get your spirits down. You'll be sound. Just keep pressing on. Keep coming to stuff like this. Watching two people completely disagree over LinkedIn. You never know which of these kind of free resources is really gonna. You just need that one piece of information sometimes that just makes everything click together for you. So just keep plowing on, and you'll be absolutely sound.
Amazing. And I think just looking at the chat, it looks like you've done loads of networking with lots of people. What I'll do is, rather than immediately end this session, I'll stop our video. So Alec and I will jump off. And if you want to go through and just look at anybody's Instagrams, I'll sort of just leave it live and just mute so that you can't hear me talking rubbish in the background. But yeah, definitely do connect and follow people. And yeah, make sure that you're following both our platforms, and we appreciate word of mouth as well, so please do tell people about our platforms as well. But yeah, have a great rest of your week, everyone. Thanks for joining.
Thanks, everybody. Bye.